Welcome to the Sunday worship service at the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. My name is Lars Dahl. My pronouns are he, him, and I will be serving as your worship associate today alongside the wonderful Reverend Lynn Gardner as she leads our worship today. If you're visiting us for the first time, either on Zoom or here in person, we offer you an especially warm welcome. We are so glad that you are here with us today.
It was late one night in the early 1980s. Carolyn McDade had been at a community organizing meeting in Boston to oppose U.S. policies in Central America. She'd been raised Southern Baptist in a series of small rural Louisiana towns. When Carolyn was just 6 years old, the United States entered World War II. That's when she became a peace activist, she said in an interview with Kimberly French for the UU World magazine. I never forgot Hiroshima and Nagasaki, she says. No God I had learned about would ever want to allow such behavior, such suffering, such brutality. Years later, she and her husband Jim were living in Austin, Texas, at the time of the Freedom Riders in the Civil Rights Movement. She was concerned about the lack of action in the denomination of her upbringing. Our churches were silent, she recalled. Yet if I took the theology of my childhood, I had to be active. And then a friend handed her a brochure for the First UU Church of Austin. There, she connected with people to work with. She found political mentors who invited her to march in her first demonstration. Over the years, Carolyn McDade grew to begin to understand the intersections of oppression and liberation. She worked for lots of different movements, knowing that they were all connected. She actively opposed wars, South African apartheid, U.S. foreign policy, and nuclear power. She worked for economic justice, environmental protection, and the rights of women migrant workers, prisoners, refugees, and those who are lesbian and queer. She was active in movements for years. And on the night that the hymn, Spirit of Life, came through her, she was worn out. What Carolyn remembers most clearly was the feeling she had when she left the organizing meeting and arrived at her friend Pat's home. In that 2007 interview with the UU World, she shared, when I got to Pat's house, I told her, I feel like a piece of dried cardboard that has lain in the attic for years. Just open wide the door and I'll be dust. I was tired, she said, not with my community, but with the world. Pat just sat with me, and I loved her for sitting with me. Her words are such a good reminder of the power of presence. Then Carolyn drove to her home in Newtonville. When she arrived, she said, I walked through my house in the dark, found my piano, and that was my prayer. May I not drop out. It was not written, but prayed. I knew more than anything that I wanted to continue in faith with the movement. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close. Wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me. Come to me. This hymn came into being as a prayer for solidarity, for courage, for hope. What might be your prayer? Our prayer? What might be your heart's deepest longing for justice? Reverend Ashley Horan, our beloved friend and colleague, reminds us that we take turns for the revolution. What do you need in order to humbly follow those who are leading? Or if it is your turn to lead, what do you need to have the strength and clarity to do so? About 10 years ago, members of the UU Wildflower Congregation in Austin, Texas, attended a planning meeting for an interfaith MLK event. The program was being created by Black community leaders. Wildflower, like most of our UU congregations, is largely, although not only, white. Their minister, our friend from seminary at Star King School for the Ministry, Reverend Brian Ferguson, asked what their congregation might do in support of the event. They were asked to bring a sheet cake. The following week, at a meeting of the congregation's social justice team, they discussed the upcoming MLK event. We could bring pies, said one person. Pies would be great, said another. So-and-so makes great pies. Or little cupcakes, suggested someone else. Soon the ideas were bubbling and swirling about. Until Reverend Brian interrupted. To help you picture this, Brian is Scottish American, 6'4", and speaks with a beautiful Scottish brogue, which I will not try to imitate. We were asked to bring a sheet cake by the leaders of the event. So that is what we are going to bring. Who would like to bake or order the sheet cake? I can just imagine the texture of quiet in that room. Earlier today in our Time for All Ages, we played a few rounds of Follow the Leader. Some of you may have thought that who the leader was the important part of each round. In fact, most of us were practicing following. It can be hard to learn to follow, to just do what is asked of us rather than to superimpose our own ideas or priorities. And yet, when we demonstrate that we can actually follow, we can build trust. On the day of the MLK event, as the Austin community gathered, one of the organizers approached Brian. Are you the pastor of the congregation that brought the sheet cake? Yes, he answered. Would you be willing to offer the closing prayer? I would be honored, he said. And he was, and he did what he was invited to do. Now, some of us may think or have been taught that we are supposed to have the answers, or that we do have the answers, that we know what is best in a situation or for a community that we are not currently part of. Such arrogance inhibits collaboration and equity. Sometimes we need to learn and practice humility. This past week, Barrett Michalek associate professor at the Edson College of Nursing and Health Innovation at Arizona State University, was on NPR speaking about humility. He said, the trait of humility is often associated with having an accurate understanding of our own and others' abilities and achievements, knowing our limitations, being willing and able to say we don't know something or are wrong, and knowing we are just a small part of a larger society and universe. Knowing our limitations, being willing and able to say what we don't know, that we don't know something or that we are wrong, and knowing we are just a small part of a larger society and universe. Reminds me of our commitment and our affirmation of being part of an interdependent web. Recently, I started reading a series of Canadian mysteries by Louise Penny, following a recommendation by a member of the UUSS board and worship team, Robin Salvin, who you'll have the gift of hearing sing a little later today. The mystery series takes place in Quebec and features a fictional police detective, Armand Gamache. Gamache has several proteges and offers each of them the same advice that he received from his first supervisor. He suggests that there are 4 important, courageous, and humble things to remember and to say. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I don't know. I need help. In the books, these 4 things are frequently forgotten or misremembered. So maybe they're worth repeating. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I don't know. I need help. Humility is valued in the world of nonfiction as well. In 2020, Dr. Lincoln Hill, a therapist and researcher, wrote, if the New York Times bestsellers nonfiction list is any indication, white people are in speed reading mode, trying to make up for the 400 years of systemic oppression as quickly as possible. As a Black woman who studies counseling psychology, she wrote, I appreciate that people are self-educating on topics of race and oppression rather than relying on Black friends, family members, neighbors, and even strangers to engage in the emotional labor of explaining these subjects. But what people reading those books need to understand is that being anti-racist isn't about checking off boxes. Dr. Hill continues, becoming more culturally competent, gaining knowledge about cultures different than your own, is only one part of anti-racism and won't necessarily lead to understanding and personal change. It must be paired with cultural humility, which involves an acknowledgement that the other group holds the expertise. It's a lifelong commitment to self-evaluation and understanding that the journey is never complete. Cultural humility takes practice and a commitment to remain curious and open. It can mean questioning our own assumptions about what is good or right, and learning that there are many different ways to be. Cultural humility means learning to follow. Last weekend was the dance flurry in Saratoga Springs. A friend shared a video of a room full of folks contra dancing, moving, twirling, changing partners. It was joyful and beautiful. And it only worked because there were both leaders and followers, each doing their part in the dance. Creating relationships based on reciprocity and equity takes time, takes courage and humility. Reverend Melanie Mullen, who is the Director of Justice, Reconciliation, and Creation in the Episcopal Church, bless you, describes a community's experience creating such relationships. It is part of a book called We Cry Justice that was edited by Liz Theo-Harris, who is co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign. Reverend Mullen writes of ancient Christian churches and what were called meals of dissent. People blessed the food and ate together, with each offering received and shared as an equal gift. The giver's income and background did not matter. Thousands of years later, inside the largest laundromat in East Richmond, Virginia, a community of women lived into a vision of equity, love, and respect. A mission group from a wealthy downtown church chose to practice proximity, that is, getting close, when they adopted the laundromat across from Virginia's largest public housing community. Every Saturday, they gave out free quarters and snacks and spent time listening to the women of the neighborhood. The Saturday community sessions brought feelings of joy, mutual learning, and some much needed relief for overburdened residents. At first, the church members came to give charity. And the neighborhood mothers shared their wisdom and experiences and built mutuality with the women from downtown. They taught how hard it is to sustain a family in a community shaped by decades of segregation, decades of housing rules and destructive urban renewal. They showed the impact of redlining and the nation's most biased eviction laws. They explained about the rules in their housing against owning a clothes dryer, even if a family could afford one. And they offered some lessons in cultural humility. When the women from the wealthy church offered to host a holiday party with all the families they had met in the laundromat, the East Richmond mothers claimed their place in the communal relationship. They changed the menu for the community Christmas party, refusing the donated snacks, and insisted on bringing homemade chocolate cakes. With their offering of cake, they helped the community realize that equity and right relationship involve both giving and receiving, both leading and following. We all have something to give. We all have something to learn. Whether we are with our families or this congregation or creating collaborative relationships in the wider community, may we learn and practice cultural humility. May we learn to follow with grace and gratitude. And if we are asked, let's bring a sheet cake. Salam, shalom, amen, ashe, namaste, and blessed be.